Greetings again, my fellow warriors. This is Sage Armageddon returning to you again with another dojo training session. In the last session, we discussed a bit of a foreign concept and idea known as Wu Wei.
I don't have time to play.
Of course, this concept involved the idea of effortless action, and I went ahead and explained some of those ideas in further detail, right? Now, what I wanted to go ahead and do in this follow-up video is see how we can apply this to Chun Li. Now, I gave a
What are you
little bit of
waiting
a
for?
prelude to it in the previous video, but here I wanted to see if I can break it down in a bit of better detail exactly how we can use this effortless action, correct? Now, just for any that are concerned, this effortless action does not
I
mean
don't have time to
that we do
play.
not train. Right? It does not mean that we do not seek to better ourselves, but we don't strain unnecessarily and push ourselves to the point of suffering and removing our peace, correct? Now, that is the idea of Wu Wei
What are you
in
waiting
my
for?
understanding of this concept. Right? This concept most likely goes far deeper with the ideas. Um, and I'm pretty sure that I could intuit my way into those ideas. But for now, that's pretty much the basics of this idea, and we can implement
I don't
them
have
in
time to play.
extraordinary ways, not only just in this game, but also in real life as well, correct? So, but in this game, this is the topic of how we're going to be using it, and with Chun Li specifically. So, remember, Wu Wei is not laziness, it's not lethargy, it's not that you do not care. It's that you are not bound by that care. You are not obsessed to the point of sickness, right? So effortless action is being able to flow with something, right? Sometimes when we're
What are
playing
you
the
waiting
game
for?
and our opponents are doing things to us, let's say if we go ahead and do a specific setup with Kid. Actually, let me go ahead and use Chun Li as a dummy this time. This is a first, right? Let's see if I can set something up to give the idea of what I'm talking about here. So we're fighting Chun Li, right? And Chun Li does something like this to us, right? So we're used to charging, right? You know, that way if something happens, um, we can go something like that. Whoops, I'm actually dropping it right now. It's strange how sometimes I would just drop this stuff for no reason whatsoever, right? But um, that's what we're trying to do, right? For this version as well. In one of the previous videos, I mentioned not to try this method, right? Feel free to go watch one of those previous versions if you are curious why. But um, I might use this just to demonstrate, but this is a lab demonstration purposes only. This is not practical in an actual game, unless you know the exact reason why it's not. So we're used to charging so we can get things like this, right? So that we can get the spinning bird kick, you know how it is, right? Because we want to get that meterless knockdown so that we can run our OP and things of that nature. But let's say Chun Li puts us in that type of dilemma, correct? All right, I'm gonna block, and you notice we got hit, right? So even if Chun Li backs off and gives us our turn back there, we can't. This is a situation in which we can't charge because obviously we're gonna get hit. So if Chun Li puts us in that situation, we want to stand block. And if we go to, as you can see, while Chun Li is still +4, but let's say for some odd reason we wanted to try to retaliate, right? We can't because obviously if we crouch, we get hit and then we get combos. So we have to stand block to block that, right? And if we wanted to retaliate by pressing buttons, um, Chun Li, we no longer have our charge. So we can't focus on, man, I want to get the knockdown and I want to get the knockdown and really Let's see if I can get some good Oki off of this, right? We can't really do that because we're standing. So the concept of Wu Wei, we don't want to be focused so heavily specifically on trying to do everything optimally, right? We want to be able to flow with the character and the situation. So a good example, let me see if I can get a better example. We're gonna get Chun Li to do that. Okay, so same concept, right? Now, except this time we have advantage, so it makes more sense for us to try to press something. This is more practical. Chun Li does this. Obviously, if we crouch, not only will she get the hit and she be +2 in our face, but we're being hit, right? So we don't want to press any buttons in this situation. So if we block it, however, we can't do the charge motion because we're not charging. We had to stand to block. So instead of trying to do something like this, sorry, I don't know why that's dropping today. All right. Instead of running, let's get Chun Li to stop pressing for me, my dear. So instead of running our standard Oki situations, right? We gotta do something like this because we're standing. Now, like I said, we don't get the best Oki because we can't grab our opponent like off of the spinning bird. We can't. The only things that we can really do that make the most sense to make the use out of our frames. Now, technically speaking, we could do another jab, right? We could do something like this, right? Or we can do something like this, right? Or something like this. Those are more practical options. Obviously, that can be extended further. But I think you get that this isn't about combo or pressure structure or anything like that, right? This is to help demonstrate that our options are not as great, right? Because obviously, if we do this or this, the opponent can just trade with us, and the pushback is way too far for us to actually get anything meaningful from. Actually, let's get you to do that on block. No, after, I'm sorry. Reversal after damage. Yes, we want to light. All right, that's too far. We can't. And as you can see, we're only like +5 off of that, so we can't reach them to actually do anything with it. Anybody that's aware of this can just simply check us out of that by jabbing, right? Of course, not everybody has a 4-frame jab that will go far enough to meet Chun Li's, but I think you get it. We're still pretty close to them. Most characters, their jab will still meet ours, right? So we can't really get away with that as much as we want to, right? So our options are kind of limited. Probably the best thing that we can do after something like this is something like that, right? But it is what it is, right? We can't be that's the way Capcom made the character. We just have to work with it the best that we can. So if we are in situations where we cannot charge, we want to make sure that we are trained to respond to the situation fluidly. Instead of our opponent doing the overhead. So I think I deleted that. Oh, here we go. Instead of them doing the overhead, then us trying to crouch and do something like that, it's better instead of expending a frame or two to crouch, which is too late to really do anything with that. We just gave up our turn, right? We can just do this, right? Obviously, if our opponent blocks that, we're not going to do the lightning legs because we don't want to destroy ourselves, right? So we might do something a little bit different. If you really, really want to get that pressure, you can do something like, well, obviously it depends on if your opponent gets hit or not. So let's put it on let's put the bot on random block so that we can try to hit her first. Or something like that, right? That's a lot of meter, but if you're in a situation where you're about to end your opponent's life, you can spend as much meter as necessary, right? So, right, let's try it again. Right. Or you can just end it with the jab, right? You don't have to necessarily do anything. You just do that. Right. Even if your opponent gets hit, it's hard to hit confirm with only two jabs, right? So that's not easy. That's not an easy thing to do. The reason why I was able to do that is because I'm assuming that I'm going to be doing this anyway, because if they block it, the only meaningful thing that I can do is going to be something. Wait a minute. I said block ball. I think one of the buttons is still. Okay, let's turn that off. The only meaningful thing that I can really do is something like this, right? Or a better example, since our opponent blocked it, right? Because obviously, if we do a jab like that, then we don't want to do something like this because we can get blown up out of it. So if our opponent is blocking, most we can do is trade with that, right? If they press a light jab, then we trade. So, like I said, this isn't about offensive structure or anything, but it's to help get the point that we're kind of free flowing with the situation here, because we had the stand block. We're not able to charge to get the spinning bird kick or anything like that. Now, of course, you can still charge to do something like this, right? You still have that. It's not the most practical combo situation, but it is resetting the neutral at the very least, which is a state that Chun Li is okay with being in, right? So those are just a few more practical applications for how we can apply this concept to actually playing with the character. Um, Let me see if I can come up with something else here that would be useful for us to do. Well, just simply put it in better in terms that this concept in and of itself embodies our hit confirm strings, right? Remember how we discussed in one of the previous videos, and just a basic fundamental of playing this game, that we do something different depending on if our opponent is getting hit or not. Let's go ahead and put the bot on random block, right? We do something different based upon if we're able to confirm that our opponent is being hit or not. That right there is a rudimentary example of the Wu Wei concept as well. We're not strictly focusing so hard on getting that combo that we do something like this when our opponent is blocking. Well, as you can see, Chun Li stopped the random block, stopped right at the spinning bird kick. But we should assume, of course, that since our opponent blocked the first two, they're gonna block the spinning bird kick, right? Unless you are very, very, very good at reading minds, right? Or you really want to take that risk. But we should assume, generally speaking, that they're gonna block the spinning bird kick as well, right? So that right there is a rudimentary concept of it as well. We're flowing with the situation, right? We don't have an expected outcome, because if we had an expected outcome, if we were attached to trying to get the outcome that we want to have and trying to force it, we would do something like this while they're blocking, which is a no-no. That's really bad, because we're gonna get blown up, and even people that aren't that knowledgeable about matchups can blow Chun Li up for this. I fight people that clearly don't know the Chun Li matchup, and they will still punish me for doing something like this, right? And they still punish me for doing something like this. So we don't want to have that attachment. So this is actually an example that many of us have already been doing of the concept of Wu Wei with the character. Pretty much free flowing with the situation, depending on whether our opponent is being hit or not. That we can actually confirm, of course. See? Right. Or if we extend it a little bit further, if they block. Something like that, right? So being able to flow with the situation is important. It's gonna be important for a lot of these characters, but it's definitely gonna be important for Chun Li, because he's a defensive based character, and the structure of your defense is going to constantly be changing as your opponent does things, right? It's also going to be changing depending on how much you are aware of. Your opponent might do something, let's say, that we know is actually hyper punishable, let's go ahead and get Chun Li to do that, right? We technically know that this is hyper punishable, right? We're Chun Li players, we know that this is -8, so we can do something like that. And I'm mistiming it. Your timing has to be very on point. As you can see, the timing is gonna be, it has to be very on point. But that, if you wanted to get the maximum damage for somebody doing something crazy like that, that's what you would do, because -8 is probably the best that you can get, right? Or you know, you could do something like this, get a safe jump, right? Things like that, right? Now, sometimes when you're in the middle of a hectic match with your opponent, this is a fast-paced game compared to Tekken, at least. But you know, it's a faster-paced fighting game. So sometimes you're in the heat of battle and your opponent lets that slip, and you don't catch it quickly enough to recognize that that's a lightning hit, right? That it's -8 and that you can punish it. You technically know that, but sometimes in the middle of the match, as you can see, the timing is very tight. Like you pretty much have to know that they're going to do it in order to get that, unless you mash it. See how many times I failed to do that, even though it's clearly -8? Because us trying to, like, if you're crouching, for example, that's part of the reason why, because we have to stand up, and that's going to take an extra bit of frames, right? So that type of stuff can make this significantly harder for us to actually get that. So in the middle of a hectic fight, you're sweating against your opponent or whatever. You're using Wu Wei, right? You're not necessarily like struggling with anger or frustration, but you're doing what you can to not get hooked. Right? And your opponent messes up for whatever reason, and they do something like that, and you catch it at the last second. Oh, he just messed that up. It's not the most damage. It's not the most optimal thing, but you caught her. And that could actually lead to a win, right? Even something like this. It's better than nothing, right? Instead of beating ourselves up, man, we didn't get the optimal combo in that situation. It's okay. Our decision making was being strained in this moment because we're trying not to get hooked by a very skilled opponent that is pressuring us. And they actually let something like this slip and we don't expect it. It's hard to get this while I know it's happening. Imagine in the middle of a fight where something like this happens against an ultimate master of Chun Li and they accidentally do that. I think you can be forgiven for just doing something like that to punish them and working with it from there, right? So we don't want to be attached to always getting that optimal stuff. And I know it's hard not to do this because not only just as people, our own greed to always get what we perceive to be the best in any situation, but this potential greed can be developed further by professional players as telling us that you have to get the optimal stuff, right? These are people that have natural talent more often than not. They train to play this game. It pretty much it either is their job or they do it like it is their job. And on top of that, they might just have the very fast reflexes and things of that nature, right? So they're more likely going to be able to train themselves in order to get that on command because they are so experienced playing the game. But that's not everybody. And not everybody has to do that. I'm pretty sure that there are some pro players that don't always get the maximum damage combos. They don't get the most optimal things. Right? But they're still pros and they still put really skilled players, right? So we don't want to focus so much on always being optimal. It's fine if you can do it comfortably to train to be able to have that in your arsenal in case it comes up. You never know. You might fight a Chun Li that just keeps doing this and they're predictable. Right? I'm sorry. They keep doing this over and over again. And you're like, okay, he likes to keep doing that. And then you punish it like that, right? So it's good to know how to do it, to have it in your arsenal. But to always depend on doing that it will cause us to strain ourselves trying to do the exact most optimal thing every time our opponent screws up. Right? Let me see. Go ahead and do that for me again. That's actually -9. So yeah, we probably do something like that, and we have a better chance of getting away with it because we get an extra frame to work with. But we don't always have to do that, right? You can just do. Yeah, was supposed to be standing. You can do something like this, right? So don't always worry about. Even when I see Moki play, I've spied Moki in certain situations not getting, he's one of the best Chun Li players in the world, not getting the optimal combo in a situation where he can grab it, and that's a part of the decision making, right? And that decision making starts before we even get in the game, and that's, hey, I'm not going to be what they would call anal over trying to maximize on everything. I'm going to take what I can get and be happy with it, right? So even if it's something as simple as this, and then following up with that, right? That's fine. You don't always have to have everything to the max. And if you get used to doing this type of free flow thing with Chun Li, and you train yourself to also, to know what to do in multiple different situations and all the different options that you have with it, you'll be surprised how eloquently you can flow depending on the situation, right? If we set the bot to block randomly, you'll be surprised how skilled you will become at being able to, convert depending on the situation. As if this was a real person blocking in a real actual game, right? Notice how I'm not getting everything optimal. Sometimes my opponent is being hit, but I'm still... And this is kind of how I sequence stuff in an actual game. I'm not thinking about this stuff. I'm not worried about it. Notice how I didn't go for the spinning bird kick here, because my opponent was getting hit, but I was so far away from them that this might not have connected enough for it to actually combo because of how much pushback I got. So I opted to do something like this instead. Let's put them back in the corner. I still was able to apply pressure to the opponent. This doesn't necessarily combo, but because they're on hit stun, they can't actually interrupt it, right? So sometimes stuff like that happens too. I'm just playing. I'm just flowing. The pushback was so extreme that instead of trying to go for the spinning bird kick and missing the first part of it, I just went for something like this, right? So you're kind of getting how I structure my offense. This is how I would actually play in an actual game, right? Go for the shimmy. And I practiced with Chun Li so much that I've gotten used to how to do this. This is how I beat a lot of people. I am at a deficit because people have faster reaction speed than I do. But I beat people because of mastery of self and with the therapy, right? I'm just flowing. I'm not thinking about doing the optimal things here. Right? If I go for the shimmy or something like that, they jump, we might answer here, depending on the situation. Right? I'm just kind of free-flowing with it. Now, I have trained to be able to do this, but it also comes with knowing what all of your options are in a given situation, right? On counter hit, on regular hit, on any of these hits, right? So you want to know, obviously on counter hit, you can do something like that, right? So we set them to, you can do that, right? And if you get a punish counter, you can actually get even more. So what is that? That's, yeah. Something like that, right? I know my game. When I dropped it, I had to check just to be sure, but, I just wasn't timing it right. So you can get something like that, right? Depending on, and you want to know all of these options and train yourself to know all of these options depending on what moves you hit your opponent with. That way, you can actually release the stress of trying to keep up with everything that's happening, and you can flow with this. We set the bot back to random block. Alright. Oops. That was an execution failure. Notice how I'm sequencing my stuff so that I'm not doing anything unsafe. Like I said, this isn't supposed to be about combos. I mean, offensive structure or anything like that. And I messed up right there. But sometimes that happens, right? It's okay. Part of Wu Wei is we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to keep going. Don't worry about the failure. Worry about what you're going to do next, right? So, and even then, don't worry about what you're going to do next. Just do what you can, right? So, that's pretty much the concept. Like I said, this will probably bleed into the offensive structure because you just pretty much saw how I actually play this game in real time against people and stuff like that. Of course, this free-flowing method is the downside of this is that sometimes we'll rely too much on our instincts when playing, and it can cause us to flowchart. So you want to become extremely comfortable with being aware of this so that you don't have to say, hey, wait, I'm flowcharting, and then think about what you're doing. You'll just play naturally. Like, I'll go ahead and quote unquote turn my brain off again and keep doing this. Notice how we're doing stuff like this, and we're not doing all the stuff we were doing before. It's almost like we're playing differently, right? I'm not thinking about this stuff. Right? So you can train yourself to be able to be unpredictable without having to think about or spend mental stats on how you're going to be unpredictable, right? You can also train yourself to do that instinctively as well to really make you a machine that's hard to read, right? So, same thing with zoning. We're not being predictable here. They think we're going to start a Kapoka, we might just bust out a century. Right? They, this is all me while I'm talking to you guys. I'm not thinking about this. This is all just like practice towards mastery of self and towards the character, right? Being in harmony, Wu Wei, right? Flowing with things, effortless action. I'm not putting any effort into any of this stuff. That's why I'm able to do it while I'm still talking to you guys and have coherent thoughts at the same time, because it is effortless action, right? So that's going to be it for this second part of the concept of Wu Wei. Hopefully it was insightful for those that had never heard of this concept. And hopefully it will help you to take your game with Chun Li to the next level, or even your game with other characters as well. Right? I wish everybody luck here that attends these dojo sessions and bettering themselves in their craft with their characters. Even if you don't use Chun Li, these concepts can still apply to you, right? So hopefully you enjoyed. If you have any comments or any suggestions or any insight yourself about concepts that can be applied in the game and out of the game, and concepts that involve the mechanics of the game or applying real world concepts to the characters in the game itself, feel free to leave those comments in the comment section. Or if you see me on the subreddit, feel free to leave a comment there. Thank you all for attending this dojo session. I hope everybody has a great day, and we will grow stronger together. Take care.